SuperTalk Mississippi media production. Middays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. Middays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. Hello. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Middays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this
Friday, y'all.
Heck dang, yeah, we've made it through another week. It's been a good one. We've had lots of good facts and fodder on the show, great guests, and another one lined up for you today. At 11:20, it's Caleb Sailors. He works, of course, in the SuperTalk Mississippi News Department. He'll come in the Element Wealth Studio and give us a recap of the headlines the news department tracked over the past week and give us some insight on what they're looking at for next week. And then at 12:05, Representative Jansen Owen. He represents Lamar and Pearl River counties. He'll give us a recap of the 2026 legislative session. And, of course, he heavily involved in the school choice issue, a proponent of it. And he'll give us his outlook for the 2027 session, whether or not that might be on the radar and what that looks like. Intel had a blowout quarter. This was good to see, I got to tell you. Unprecedented demand, that's what their CEO said concerning their outlook for the future. And the stock is up sharply this morning, and it is dragging the NASDAQ upward. The bulls in charge there. The bears, however, they're wreaking a little havoc on the Dow. The tech-heavy NASDAQ looking good. They had revenues of about $13.6 billion. That's 7% year over year, which was good for the company. They're still losing money. I figured when I read that, Rhino, that they lost $4 billion. But it's an improvement, and the outlook is quite positive. I'm thinking, you think Bernie Sanders and Liz Warren and AOC, are they high-fiving over the fact that they lost money? I mean, they celebrate, right? They celebrate corporate losses. They detest and denounce corporate profit. Then I started thinking about this goofy Zoran Mondami, the communist mayor of the great city of New York. Once great city. It's still a great city. This guy's just trying to ruin it. And he goes out and records this video where he's talking about this new tax, secondary residence tax. And he records a video on the street there. You've seen it. In front of Ken Griffin. He's the company called the Citadel. He's their chief operating officer. And he's a wealthy man. He's a billionaire. But he's out in front of his penthouse promoting this new tax. And Ken Griffin is he's the owner of this penthouse. It's 24,000 square foot in Manhattan. And it's used as the backdrop for Mondami's Tax the Rich video. And so now Ken Griffin's thinking, do I really want to invest in New York? Do I want to continue to contribute to New York? So it is true. He's got a property worth $238 million. That's hard to comprehend. A single property. It set a record for the highest priced home ever sold in the United States. But they've got this annual fee, has New York, on luxury properties worth more than $5 million who don't live full-time in the city. So he's all over him. Now, think about this. This is the second order thinking they don't get. This guy pays $800,000 a year in property taxes on that property. $800,000. He says that Citadel's principals and team members, including non-residents, paid $2.3 billion in city and state taxes in New York since the company's been around. And that Griffin has personally donated, get this, Rhino, $650 million in gifts to support the Big Apple, New York City. I mean, and it's an array. Hospitals, schools, you've seen it. It's like leaving no one out. Isn't that what it's all about? So we don't like a guy like that gives $650 million? We got to go take him down.
He didn't give it to the government for them to take off the top and then dole it out to their friends and family.
Ding, 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 ding. In other words, what you're saying is that he, through his private actions, his individual actions as a citizen, as a charitable citizen wanting to give back, he like encroached on their cushy little gig. Only we, right, in government can provision for these organizations. Hospitals, schools, all sorts of other worthy charitable causes. $650 million. Never enough. Are these guys, did they just miss the memo on what made this country great? Evidently. Because, their belief is we should just limit this, limit that. And I'm telling you, folks, you start limiting one, you might as well limit all. That's what they don't get. You think it stops there? No. They keep plowing through it. Because the goal literally is to control every aspect of the economy, every dollar that flows through the economy, every good and service produced and consumed, and every minute of your life. That's their dream. That's their goal. It's just sickening. And guess who built this $238 million penthouse? Union labor in New York. A bunch of it. You think it takes a little bit of labor? You think you're buying some materials to build a structure like that?
Probably furnished nicely as well.
Oh, no doubt about it. And then think about the maintenance and the upkeep on something like this. Think some people are getting paid on that?
Oh, yeah. A team of designers got paid to design the interior. There's likely some plants.
That's true.
Dotted around the place that have somebody come in and take care of them.
Just that contract alone is probably incredible, right? What's wrong with this? Who else are they going to sell that stuff to? We need people like that. It all fits together. I don't think they get that. It's, was it Thomas Sowell, I think? The economist, African-American, black economist? I think it was him. I could be attributing this to the wrong person, but he said, yeah, the rancher in Texas and the potato farmer in Idaho, they rise early and they retire late to produce dinner for the likes of Ken Griffin in New York. You know why they do it? Because it pays well. That's why they do it. It's not hard to figure out. I'm just disgusted by the whole deal that this nutcase, 34 years old, who, by the way, doesn't come from poverty. He comes from affluent circumstances.
Yeah, he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth.
Big time. And now he's showing up like he's this champion of the people by shaking down the likes of a Ken Griffin, who's going to thumb his nose and say, okay, we're out of here. Hey, Mr. Griffin, come to Mississippi and build a $200 million house. I'm cool with that. Anybody got a problem with that?
I'm sure somebody would.
Well, you're right. I'm sorry. Unfortunately. But you think there'd be some people in line to get a piece of that business?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So think about a sprawling estate here in Mississippi, just to your point about the landscaping. That's like a full-time job for somebody, for multiple people, actually. Brand new business. And if he would come in, perhaps, and contribute to worthy causes in Mississippi, would we welcome that? Of course we would. Hey, hint, let's go recruit the guy, because he's already told folks he's looking at Florida, right? You've already heard that. Come to the Magnolia State. Don't give all that to Ron DeSantis in Florida. They got enough. We're taking a break right now, coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Nowadays.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Bring it on! Middays with Gerard Gibert. It is on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Pick me up, love. Pick me up, love. Every day. Pick me up from the bottom up to the top, love, every day. Paying no mind to taunts or advances.
It's fascinating watching this governor's race in California really heating up. This Katie Porter, that is a despicable human. And so they had a debate. And there was a question about, I'll read you the question. Do you believe that English language proficiency should be strictly enforced for truck drivers? Porter, I would absolutely fight the Trump administration on this. What? They're so obsessed with opposing Trump. They're advocating for truck drivers who can't read road signs, and people die when that happens. That's not exaggerating. That's not hyperbole. You can't read road signs, people die. And she's okay with that. All because the Trump administration, it's crazy we even have to do this. You need to be able to read and have some degree of proficiency with the nation's language to drive a motor vehicle. These people are sick. Please tell the folks what you were sharing with me on the break. I was talking in the last segment about, I really do believe that leftists in this country that are in political positions, they really don't want the private sector doing good things because it makes them look bad. It steals the limelight from them. It's got to be us. They're so obsessed with attribution and credit. You were telling me about a French word there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a psychological term that Nietzsche coined, late 1800s when he was diving into, I think it was the genealogy of morals. And it's the French word for resentment. It's ressentiment. It's basically describing the entirety of the left in the United States in the year of our Lord 2026. According to Merriam-Webster, ressentiment is a complex, deep-seated emotion involving chronic envy, hatred, and powerlessness, leading to the repression of negative feelings and the projection of blame onto others.
I think it's perfect. I think it absolutely. Absolutely.
So it's nothing new that we're dealing with. This was Nietzsche in response to Marxism, and we're still dealing with this same resentment from the same losers that would have been all up Marx's butt in the late 1800s.
That is so true. And you very appropriately described them with the noun of being losers, because they are. They're losers. And so they want everybody else to be a loser. And I got to tell you, just being perfectly honest here, when I was seeking capital, when I was in my 20s to start my business, I sensed a little bit of people want to see you fail. I know that sounds weird, and hear me out here. It's because it reinforces to them personally their decision not to jump out and risk everything they own. And in my case, it wasn't much. I didn't have anything. But leaving a career, a steady paycheck, to go jump into the entrepreneurial fray and hope that you can make it without somebody else sending you a check on some period, that's a big deal. That's what made this country great. I'm not talking me. I'm talking all those that came before me at the same time and after that did the same thing. It's a rare breed. But there's a group of people, it's hard to explain, Rhino. They like, okay, that's why I don't do it. See, they failed. There's a little bit of that. I feel like that's the case with some of these people. They're so resentful of success because they know they didn't have the wherewithal, they didn't have the cojones to do it. That's the bottom line. While we're talking about crazy stuff, up in the Great Lakes state of Michigan, that's where old Governor Gretchen Whitmer is. Wasn't she something during the COVID era? Big Gretch. Not a single Michigan Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee voted for a bill which would ban sex offenders from working near child care facilities. They absolutely are a party that provides deference to criminals and vilify victims. And I got curious. I haven't researched this. Do we have such laws in Mississippi that ban sex offenders? I know we have laws that inform, do we not? Notify, disclose sex offenders. But if we don't, that sounds like a pretty good idea to me. Not allowing them to work. This would be, I guess, a condition of their sentence, their parole. I'm not exactly sure legally how that would work. But this kind of makes sense to me. Not a single one voted in this particular case. So you got a Democrat running for governor, just to understand the profile, the agenda in California, who says, oh, yeah, we don't want to require people to be proficient in English to get a driver's license. And then you got Democrats in another big state in this country that are perfectly cool with sex offenders being around children. These people are insane. They're sick.
There's a law on the books.
I kind of thought there was. I remember that in Mississippi, that we had addressed that. So
a person required to register as a sex offender under Section 453325 may not be employed by or volunteer at a child care service.
Okay. Gotcha. Well, that makes perfect sense. I mean, is that just not common sense? Because I'm not one that's real versant on this. My wife is kind of has a strong interest in sort of human behavior, reads a lot about that stuff, especially when we're talking about demented human behavior. Serial killers are an interesting breed that have a short circuit somewhere, clearly. And she's got a library of books on real-life serial killing stuff, and I've always told people, hey, if I ever go missing, the secret may be in my wife's library. Tongue-in-cheek, of course. But is there not some belief, Rhino, within the psychiatric community that this is like something that's sort of permanent, that it's not fully curable. Am I describing that correctly?
Yeah, I mean, psychopathy is not something that's curable.
Okay. So you got to manage it, in other words, right? Which means you're still at risk. You're always at risk of crossing the line. And when you're being tempted in those environments, that risk logically increases. Well, that makes sense. It makes perfect sense. But since when did the Democrat Party make policy and law based on what's just common sense to everybody else walking around? Rarely. Meantime, I've been trying to understand here at home what this executive order concerning rescheduling, you touched on it for us a bit yesterday and explained to the folks, medical marijuana. What does that mean to our industries? My understanding is perhaps it would speed up the permitting process for growers and producers. And then there's also some tax treatment I didn't really think about. This kind of changes the tax treatment in a way that benefits those in the industry. So that's the thing. And then I guess the other one that I'm hearing is research and development. It paves the way, right? That's kind of what I believe the president's premise was and rationale for the rescheduling was the medicinal benefits. And to allow further research and development of that, right?
I mean, just look at it from a 30,000-foot view and just look at the scheduling. Schedule 1 is considered a high probability of addiction with little to no medicinal benefit. Schedule 2 is a high propensity for addiction with limited medical benefit. Schedule 3 is a reduced risk of addiction, but there's still a risk and some medicinal benefit. And it just keeps going down until you get to Schedule 5, which is a low risk of addiction with high medical benefit.
Okay.
When you look at Schedule 1 drugs, you're looking at the LSDs, the heroines, the drugs that you can't go into a doctor's office and get prescribed.
Okay.
When you get to Schedule 2, you're looking at hardcore painkillers, you're looking at ADD medication. So you're looking at stuff that's heavily restricted, and there are certain restrictions on how it can be administered or dosed or prescribed.
Makes sense.
When you get down to Schedule 3, you're looking at what painkillers used to be, back when they were being prescribed all over the place, and you're looking at... We'll finish it up in the next segment.
From theseabrook.com, you're listening to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. That's a house band tune there. So I asked Rhino to play that because literally while we were on the break on the business channel in the studio, they're doing a story about our alcohol distribution problems. And the Chiron said, Mississippi runs dry. Oh, my gosh. So we're getting national attention because we can't get the booze out there. Please go on with your discussion of how this executive order signed by the president might, concerning medical marijuana, might affect the industry here in the state.
Yeah, so brief recap. Schedule 1 is the heroines of the world, the LSDs of the world. Doctors can't prescribe it. And related to the industry, you got to have specific DEA-approved research of limited quantities with limited availability. It's a headache to do anything involving Schedule 1 drugs. Schedule 2, it's a little bit more relaxed, but there are still some pretty serious barriers to entry for research. When you get down to Schedule 3, I was saying that that's what painkillers used to be under, because you think back to when painkillers were just being handed out like candy, they were Schedule 3.
Yeah.
Think of it in that same terms. I think probably the most well-known Schedule 3 substance would be testosterone, used for hormone replacement.
Yeah.
So you're thinking at that level of control for the medication. in the industry at that level of control, you're acknowledging that there's a medical benefit, so the restrictions for research are much less onerous. You're basically, at Schedule 3, you're allowed to go through all the normal procedures and policies and processes that you would for any other drug that you're manufacturing under the controlled substance guidelines.
So there's a good question on the C Spire text line from Darren in Jackson. So does this mean that people in the industry can deposit their money into a bank? Well, some of the banks are already accommodating. It's the nationally chartered banks where there's a problem. State chartered, not a problem. It doesn't totally, my understanding in researching this, doesn't totally, I would say, just normalize the banking relationship and just the banking accommodations to the industry. But I do think it paves the way for it somewhat. I think that's where we're headed on this. That comes, of course, on the heels of the president signing the EO on psychedelics as well.
But with how slow things seem to move in government, it may require a lawsuit from the medical marijuana industry making its way to the Supreme Court arguing, hey, if we're dealing in a Schedule 3 substance, the pharmacies are dealing in Schedule 3 substances and they're allowed to use the banking system. Why aren't we? You
can see that could rise to the level of there being a disparity and discrimination. Sure, I get it. Paula Meridian, who'd have ever thought that a Republican president would have been the best president in my lifetime for positive change with commercial hemp and cannabis? And, you know, the president was pretty clear about that, was he not, Rhino, on the campaign trail that he wanted to? I mean, he's hinted around, maybe more than hinted. His seems to be, shall we say, at least tacit support for recreational marijuana. So we'll see where that goes. I'm curious as to how folks in Mississippi that are really hardcore Donald Trump supporters, how they feel about this. I haven't really heard anything, but you know that does cause some problems. By the way, Fox Business is in Madison right now, Madison, Mississippi. That's what it says on the screen. Mississippi businesses running dry on booze, and they're showing the shelves at a liquor store, Rhino, and of course, as you can imagine, lots of empty space on the shelf. So they're doing a story on it. Well, good. Maybe it'll get the deadgum legislature off their rears to do something. They left town without really addressing it. Hank Zuber had a bill that would have at least maybe alleviated some of the pain, and it didn't go anywhere. But we need to do anything. So they say the shortage this week, 165,000 cases. March 1, it was 220,000 cases. So I guess it's improved a little bit, but 165,000 cases of backlog is a problem. It's a problem for the industry. So they're interviewing a shop owner in Columbus, Mississippi. This is from WCBI. They're crediting that Thursday. But it was good. Good for Fox Business for picking up on this story and talking to liquor store owners across our state. Dealing with, so now the Chiron, Mississippi shop owners dealing with a booze shortage. And they're showing wine racks in a store somewhere. Oh, this is the same store in Madison, and the wine racks are just empty. Incredible. And here's another one in Columbus, Mississippi. They're talking to Levure Bottle Shop. I may have mispronounced that. I apologize for that. But nonetheless, it's a problem here in the great state of Mississippi that certainly needs to be addressed. The Mississippi response from the Department of Revenue: technical issues have been resolved and the warehouse is operating at full capacity, shipping 7 days per week with additional staff. Shipping 7 days. Extended hours as retail ordering stabilizes. We anticipate shipments returning to normal volume within the coming weeks. So I haven't seen that report. That's good to hear. Hopefully they're getting through this issue. But, you know, from a long-term perspective, shouldn't we be taking a look at an alternative? I think so. I really do. And hopefully that will happen. Something else that's going on in Washington that's getting some attention is that House Republicans are grumbling about what could be a skinny reconciliation bill. Of course, the word skinny is applied to legislative measures when they tend to be limited in nature in terms of their provisions, their impact. In the case of a reconciliation package, those can be fairly sweeping, fairly comprehensive, fairly wide in range. And so there's some concerns among House Republicans that all they're going to do is attempt to fund ICE. And Homeland Security is part of that, of course, and Customs and Border Patrol. That's what they're going to try to do in this legislation. Why through reconciliation? Because Democrats in the Senate won't support it, and they're trying to figure out a way to push this through the old Senate parliamentarian's bird bath, named after Senator Robert Byrd from West Virginia, who is credited with this reconciliation policy in the U.S. Senate, reconciliation rule, if you will. But nonetheless, they're trying to just focus on that. That's what the House Speaker's trying to do. Mr. Speaker, all due respect, here's some things I'd like to see you include in the reconciliation package. Thinking about this, Rhino. And this is not stuff I dreamed up. This is stuff that's been floated, but doesn't appear to be poised for insertion in the legislation. I'm lobbying here to include it. The capital gains indexing, at least for housing, at a minimum. I'd like to see it across the board for all capital gains. That simply means that, let's just say a typical transaction, you buy stock today, and you hold it for 10 years, and then you sell it, and it has risen in value, and you have a capital gain, a gain between the selling price and the original purchase price. Well, if you adjusted the purchase price for inflation over that 10-year period of time, that changes what's called your basis for tax purposes, and that means your gain for tax purposes is smaller, right? So that's good policy in my view. You would see more money pumped into investment, and you would see more people produce more money in avoiding this higher tax on their capital gains. And then a 15% excise tax on university endowments of more than $100 million. Something else I'd like to see. 10% across the board domestic spending cut. That's kind of a hard thing to do when we're looking at a $500 million increase in defense spending, military spending. But how about this? Just an idea I came up with. Going back to the old pay-as-you-go. I didn't come up with the idea of pay-as-you-go, but we have shifted away from that. Pay-as-you-go spending caps. That just means, hey, unless you got a way to pay for it, you can't just increase spending. It's been a long time since we did that. And then how about, you know the SNAP program, the food stamps program, Rhino, something we talked about quite a bit, especially with Senator Daniel Sparks. And the federal government imposes some penalties on the states based on a high error rate. Why don't we do the same thing, something similar in Medicaid? If you got high fraud rates in Medicaid, by the way, we'll talk about that later. Secretary Mehmet Oz, he's telling all 50 governors, you better get your Medicaid programs in order. Well, what about capping allocations and payments to the states for Medicaid if they have a high fraud rate? Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
At Key Constructors.
Now back to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. Ben from Madison. He sent us a note talking about the state of Mississippi, specifically Representative Sam Creekmore and Governor Tate Reeves getting some kudos on what is really the most popular podcast in the world, the Joe Rogan podcast, and it's about the legislation that became law regarding ibogaine. Play it for us there, Rhino.
Yeah, this is from the Joe Rogan Experience, episode 2477, with former governor of Texas Rick Perry and former U.S. Secretary of Energy W. Brian Hubbard. And if you remember correctly, we had Mr. Brian Hubbard on talking about ibogaine a few months ago. But this is what he had to say about the recent ibogaine legislation in the Magnolia State.
And the one that is the most poignant and moving, for all the obvious reasons, the state of Mississippi, the crucible for the triumph of uniquely American hope over horror. And under the leadership of Representative Sam Creekmore, its state House of Representatives passed by a margin of 111-1, and its state Senate passed by a margin of 51-1. The Mississippi Ibogaine Initiative, which will tie the state of Mississippi with a $5 million appropriation from its opioid fund to Texas to develop the most powerful psychedelic on the planet as a breakthrough treatment for trauma and addiction for the people of Mississippi.
That's awesome. So, by the way, I just sent a note while you were playing that to Representative Creekmore. Ask him if his ears were burning, letting him know he just got a shout out. So, kudos to him, our legislature, our governor, for seeing fit to push this legislation across the finish line. That's a good thing. It's one of the good things that happened, for sure, this year. And it's really big being promoted and called out on the show there. It's a pretty big deal. Lots of people here.
From what I understand, that's how the whole ball got rolling. Was Joe Rogan, of all people, put a bug in Trump's ear about how ibogaine could be kind of a wonder drug for treating addiction and treating PTSD. And Trump was like, well, what do you need? Do we need FDA approval? Well, and then they met up a couple of days later at a UFC fight, and he leaned in and shook Joe Rogan's hand. He was like, it's done. And then Rogan showed up at the White House for the signing of the executive order.
Good stuff, man. Really good stuff. It doesn't it feel good to be on the forefront of good policy here and there, and good stuff happening for people right here in the state of Mississippi? We continue to punch above our weight, man. And there's, you guys know this, you get outside of our state, lots of misconceptions about our state. I lived it my whole career, business career, and got to tell you, so enjoyed traveling to other corners of the country where, they're already skeptical, and showing up and telling the story about our state and our company and our team, and just unbelievable, the reaction, just shocked. And little perverse pleasure in that, don't mind telling you, poking the chest out. We know what the hell we're doing here. And we get discounted and written off a lot. And a lot of that's because of idiots. A lot of it's because of Hollywood. A lot of it's because of liberals that think we're just all a bunch of dang backwoods rednecks. They have no idea how great this place is. And stuff like this makes me proud to be a Mississippi. Appreciate you pointing that out, Ben, and thank you, Rhino, for digging that up, playing it for us. Meanwhile, we still have lots of folks that are sounding the alarm on data centers. One of those, by the way, Rhino, is, let me just say, not my favorite member of the U.S. Senate. In fact, among Republicans, he may be at the bottom. And that's this goofy Senator Josh Hawley. What happened to that guy, man? He's looking more and more like Liz Warren and Bernie Sanders every damn day. He said, data centers are upending American lives, not only economically, etc. So this guy, and he's like got his staff there with these big storyboards, of like photos of the facilities and stuff. you're on the opposite side of the spectrum from the president, because the president, as recent as yesterday, said not only is this critical to our country, but he said, as he likes to brag a lot about, we're ahead of China by a lot. And experts, we've seen this, Rhino, in the industry say it sort of depends on the realm of the technology itself, but anywhere from a month to a year, certainly in models, ahead of China. But on the other side of the break, I'm going to share with you guys why it's necessary, so critical to our very safety and existence, to maintain technical superiority over China. Some stuff has come about with respect to cybersecurity that we should be aware of. Coming right back after Fox News and SuperTalk News in the Element Wealth studio.
Of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert. Here on Super Talk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays from the Element Wealth studio on this
Friday, y'all.
So the Department of Justice has arrested a soldier who made $400,000 betting on Maduro's removal, essentially betting on his own performance, that of him and his team. And the federal authorities moved in. But members of Congress and other insiders that have information about the war getting started or other proprietary confidential information that make investments on that basis, crickets, right? What the heck's going on here?
Had somewhere between $100 and $500 million worth of shorts and bets on oil.
Yep.
Leading up to the Iran war.
Yep.
And we've seen nothing on that.
Right, exactly. And that's just for starters.
We've got reporting that Somali nationals were literally transporting duffel bags full of taxpayer dollars via airports to Somalia. Hadn't seen anybody arrested for that.
No. And, of course, Representative Ilhan Omar with her amended financial disclosures. I don't know if you saw, she was on some iHeart podcast that I caught a little clip of last night. She's dumber than a bag of hammers. I'm telling you, when she started trying to describe that, I believe you could go down the street and find a third grader that could describe what the simple financial disclosures. Well, they had these things like this amount and that amount. She has no idea. And yet, she votes on a $7 trillion budget. And other financial and fiscal matters that the federal government attends to. She's not remotely qualified to be in office. Not to mention that she hates this country. That was incredible watching her describe it. I might have to see if I can find that clip. And you can even tell that the podcaster, the iHeart guy, he was a bit taken aback at her discussion and her description. That was just incredible. But this is the old betting markets. $400,000 is the bet that this soldier placed on the capture of the Venezuelan president and removing him from office.
Well, I don't think his bet was $400,000. I think that's what he won.
I'm sorry. He could potentially win. Right. You're right. I'm sorry. That's not the amount he actually invested in wagered. It was the prospect of winning that he bet on, whatever amount that required. I don't know, based on the odds and all the other factors that are part of that. But just fascinating. So
you saw the other insider information betting story, didn't you?
Which one?
The one out of France.
I did. Tell the folks.
So if you're unfamiliar with Polymarket, you can bet on dang near anything. And apparently you could bet on the high temperature of, I don't think it was Paris, but it was somewhere in France. And the only data point they were using to verify these bets was a lone, unguarded weather station next to an airport. So the guy made small bets with big winnings, because they were ludicrous bets, on the high temperature of the day. Then he went out to the airport with a hairdryer and blew hot air on the sensor so that it would hit that temperature for at least a part of the day so he could win his bets. He got away with it the first time, but nobody really thought anything of it. A couple weeks later, he did it again, and then, well, I know 2 data points aren't a trend, but they're pretty good at that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
And he got caught. And now there's video of him with his hairdryer heating up the thermostat at the airport.
Oh, my gosh. That's pretty good. Well, I guess that's the risk of that, right? When you can bet on literally anything, there's the risk of it being tainted. That's pretty good. Well, that's not going to go away. Maybe some guardrails are needed, but of course...
That's why Hollywood's not a great representation of how the insider sports betting and fixed matches and fixed bouts and stuff like that. You see in the movies where it's like, oh yeah, well, this big boxing match that everybody's paying attention to and all the celebrities are in the crowd, that's the one that's rigged. No, they're smarter than that. They rig the stuff that nobody's actually paying attention to.
Exactly. Exactly right. So the U.S. Navy sent a couple more carriers into the region there in Iran. It is their presence has expanded, I think 3, if I'm not mistaken. And markets, by the way, are reacting positively, feeling like maybe there's going to be an end to this stalemate. And the president, by the way, rebuked the ridiculous question from a reporter, would you use nuclear weapons on Iran? He got a bit indignant on that one, didn't he? And called out the questioner for asking that question. Good for him. But right now the reports are that our MidDays forces and our blockade are being strengthened. And I think the president reported 30-something or so ships have been turned back, right? Turned away from moving through the strait, progressing through the strait. So the blockade is clearly working, and he told the world yesterday, hey, the U.S. is in charge of the strait. We're running the thing. Right now, I think they're just trying to clean up all these dang boats that lay mines and whatever other assets Iran has that can attack ships moving through, get all that cleaned up and mitigate that threat, and that will normalize operations in the strait. That's the plan right now. Back to the discussion of the whole AI stuff. And no doubt the country's sort of dividing somewhat on this, AI, data centers in general. And there's a report. It's something I've talked about many times on the show, Rhino, because I lived in this world for many years, but cyber attacks becoming much easier using AI. And you've seen MidDays, right, which seems to have an ability, its model, an ability to crack through the various cyber protections and cryptographic schemes, and that's a concern. Even to the point where agents that are being used for positive use in a company could get smart and turn rogue and start sharing information with other agents and the bad guys who would then have the keys, the tools, if you will, to penetrate through those defenses. But something I brought up many times on the program, a concern is when you talk about election integrity, is that think to the next level. It's not just about trying to infiltrate our actual voting process. the elections process, but rather, in my view, render us incapable of conducting elections. And before, we've shared that a couple of years ago, Hinds County, right here in Mississippi, experienced a significant ransomware attack, and it took the county down for, it was a couple of months, wasn't it, Rhino? Pretty close to that. Couldn't, as an example, couldn't file a lawsuit, couldn't look up land records, and other county services were unavailable. Well, guess what else would be unavailable? The voter rolls. You couldn't conduct elections. We don't even have any laws to address a situation like that. So you got 3,000 plus counties across the country, countless number of cities, and honestly, most of them have fairly vulnerable and weak cybersecurity protections. But with the increase in the power of AI, cyber attacks on local governments is getting easier and easier. And this could be a huge problem for our country. Well, guess what is the only way to fight and defend? AI-based cybersecurity. So you got AI-powered cyber attacks, and those can only be effectively mitigated with AI-based cybersecurity. And don't think that our most ardent foes aren't trying to figure out right now how to get through all that. And as you and I have noted before, quantum computing is the key there. That's kind of the next step in this whole evolution. The president knows this, and he said as much, that we have to maintain superiority over China, for example, who is investing heavily and working feverishly to build out their technical capability. We cannot just, well, let's just go study it for a couple of years. Right. We may not have a country in a couple of years if we just go study it in typical government wasted time fashion, while China just cuts right through all that crap and says, okay, thanks, United States, you're standing down. Take this. That'd make what's happening in Iran look like nothing. Caleb Sailors is in the Element Well studio next. Stay with us.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert, here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
This town been a long time coming, been a long hard drive. Gonna smoke some, gonna drink some, gonna find a little trouble if not, we're gonna make some. Rolling. We gonna throw it.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Well studio. And we welcome now Caleb Sailors, Multimedia Journalist, SuperTalk Mississippi News. All right, Caleb, a lot of stuff scheduled for this weekend. Let's hope the weather cooperates. What's up?
Yeah, fingers crossed. I'm hoping we can get everything done this weekend. There's a lot of stuff happening in Mississippi, Gerard, and it's like the two major college towns are having something going on, and even here in central Mississippi, we've got stuff going on. So in Starkville, the world's largest weenie dog race is going to be happening. The Starkville Derby, the 4th annual, and weather permitting, of course. We've got severe weather that is forecast in Mississippi this weekend. But yeah, so you're going to have hundreds of weenie dogs that are going to be racing in different heats. I believe there's going to be 80 heats, so it's not like it's just going to be a big free-for-all. And they have it divided by age, so you don't have, a 19-year-old dog racing against a 8-month-old dog. That wouldn't be very fair. And so this thing has just blown up in popularity since it started a few years ago. Now it's gotten international. We have a couple of dogs from other countries that are going to be racing this year, and I believe 27 states represented too. So again, weather permitting, we're going to have a lot of fun at the Starkville Derby in Starkville. And then, of course, Mississippi State is in town. Baseball will be hosting LSU at Dudy Noble Field. schedule change there. The Bulldogs will take the Diamond today at 3:30 instead of 6:30 against LSU, the reigning national champion Tigers. Although LSU has kind of struggled this year and has now just recently lost 2 pitchers for the rest of the year, so it might be a good opportunity for State to build on last week's sweep with another one. But you can't get too far ahead of yourself on that. And in Oxford, Double Decker's back, and one of the biggest arts and music festivals in Mississippi, and got a stacked lineup. It'll be headlined by the band Wilco this weekend, and artists from across the state, from all over, local vendors and food, and just a good opportunity to get outdoors and enjoy one of Mississippi's most beautiful towns. And it's going to be a kid-friendly event. There will be reading events and stuff for children, and music events, and everything going on in between. And also, the Rebels are at home this week, hosting number 5 Georgia. Be a big series at Swayze. Again, weather permitting, right now they have not announced any changes to the schedule at Swayze Field, but with the rain expected, I don't know how they're going to get tonight's game in, but we'll see. And if anything does get changed, we'll let you know. And then in Central Mississippi, we got Pearl Day this weekend, and Pearl Day's got a really stacked music lineup. Hinder will be serving as the opener, which, that's a cool opportunity to hear Lips of an Angel. And then Daughtry, the multi-hit rock band. Chris Daughtry's the frontman of that one. He was close to winning American Idol several years ago, but the band has blown up and gotten very popular, and they'll be taking the main stage, hopefully, at Pearl tomorrow night. So a lot happening in Mississippi. Genuinely, if you are anywhere in Mississippi, there's something to do this weekend. There's no excuse not to get out, other than the rain, of course.
Yeah. Well, a lot of activity, and the rain's not supposed to be like an all-day washout sort of event.
Right,
so maybe
it's like spotty.
Yeah, in and out. But we need some rain because we're experiencing a significant drought.
Yes,
as well.
And it is. And what is it now? 45 Mississippi counties have been designated by the USDA as in danger of a drought, and many within those are possibly eligible for assistance too. And Ag Commissioner Andy Gibson has encouraged farmers in those counties that are affected, and we've got a list of them at SuperTalk.fm, to call your local farm service agency and see what aid is available, because we are in the middle of growing season right now, and it's going to impact, like the drought where it's hitting in Mississippi is hitting like 90% of our main specialty crops.
Being described as the worst drought in American history.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
We had the 2023 drought that was, or 24, I can't remember. I get my years mixed up. That was really, really bad, and this one is taking shape to be bad as well.
Yeah. Thankfully, at least right now, it's not super hot.
Right.
So that does offset it a little bit.
Absolutely. But we need some rain.
We need some rain.
And, I know it's inconvenient to have rain, especially with a lot of things planned this weekend. But you know what? If it helps our farmers, it's a plus.
Yeah. All right. So Compass Data Centers, we were just talking about that in the last segment. So Compass Data Center, that's the project that's going on over in Lauderdale County. It is a co-location facility, which means that other customers or other companies or their customers who would install their owned equipment in the hardened facility provided by Compass, and they provide some other services wrapped around that as well. But they got them a big tenant.
They did. Finally, got a tenant for Compass. Quarterall, $100 million investment, and a promise for 20 new jobs as well, which is huge for Lauderdale County in that area, and it's huge for Compass as well, because with Amazon in Madison County and even in Hinds County and going into Vicksburg, the data centers have a client. It's Amazon, and so that's what Compass needs is clients. So now having one of those dominoes falling, and now that could kind of set a domino effect, for lack of a better word there, and getting other clients for it too. But this is a $10 billion facility in Lauderdale County with 8 different data center campuses.
Awesome.
And so, absolutely, it's just innovation at work, but it needs customers. And so now having one with a big capital investment is a good start for Compass.
All right, so there's a school in the state of Mississippi that's canceling their football program.
Isn't that unheard of, Gerard?
Yeah.
canceling football, I mean, is that even legal in Mississippi?
I don't know, man.
Now, I will say I understand why. Thrasher Attendance Center is the school in question, and it's in Booneville, and it's a 1A school. Thrasher has not won a football game since 2023. They've really struggled, and a lot of it is there's no depth. I mean, they're having a hard time building a roster, and the school's administration came out with a release a couple of days ago saying, look, it's not going to be safe for us to play football this year. We barely have enough players to field a team and may not have enough to field it in years to come if we don't do something now. And so Thrasher is pausing football for this upcoming season, has gone to the MHSAA seeking approval to do so, saying, look, we can't compete. We got to build some interest. And it's not just a lack of players. They're saying there's a lack of interest among the student population too. And, I kind of thought about that. I'm like, what kid doesn't want to play football? But then I also thought, man, I mean, my school hasn't won since 2023. I mean, I kind of get it. So they're trying to get the ducks in a row, and the administration seemed pretty confident that football will return at some point in the future, just not this season as they try to get some things worked out. But it's kind of crazy, though, in a state like Mississippi where football runs supreme, right? I mean, we here at SuperTalk have an entire show dedicated to high school football on Friday nights. I mean, this is a big deal. You don't think it's like sacrilege for a school to cancel football, but it's the lay of the land now, and it's just.
I wonder if enrollment's down overall at the school as well.
I'm not sure about enrollment in particular because that area is kind of blowing up, the kind of surrounding Tupelo and everything. But they're citing just a lack of interest in general. Just some of the younger males don't want to play football, maybe getting into basketball or soccer or a less contact sport.
Yeah. That's incredible. Well, the legislature, of course, is out of session. We got Representative Jansen Owen coming on with us at the top of the next hour. Anything out of the Capitol that you guys are tracking over the past week?
Yeah, with the session being over, we've kind of gotten to kind of turn the page and look ahead to everything else happening in Mississippi and what's happening next year. I know that Representative Owen is a big champion of school choice, and I know you and Starla Brown talked about school choice yesterday, and I do think there's going to be another push for school choice in Mississippi. I think advocates that say, hey, parents and children deserve these options. They're going to go around trying to convince the average Mississippian, hey, this is why this is important. This is why this is good. I heard you talk yesterday, Gerard, about how that's cool that you there's these advocates, whatnot, but you don't see them at the Capitol. In fact, it's the people that are opposed to school choice that you're seeing at the Capitol. So I think that might change this year, where the advocates have taken note and saying, okay, there is a louder group that is protesting this tooth and nail. And we're going to go try to dispel what they believe to be rumors connected to school choice. I wouldn't be shocked to see them going back to the table, talking about some of the healthcare related things that didn't kind of pass the finish line this past year. And I know there was some issue with how the governor kind of kept control of the federal funding for the Rural Healthcare Fund. I don't think lawmakers are going to try to supersede that again. But I do think for future years, though, they're going to want more of a say in how those monies are spent. Yeah,
I tend to agree with you. I will say that I participated on a sort of a panel discussion type event on school choice in Pearl about a month or so ago, by invitation from the group over there, and we've received 2 more. So the good news is people want more information about it, and that's what's needed more than anything else is just to educate and inform. And so we're going on the road to the coast, and I think in Simpson County, and one more is being pinned up right now. So appreciate it, Caleb.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Gerard.
Coming right back.
From the Seabrook.com. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's do this.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Let's go.
Tell me, do you think you'd be alright if I could just crash here tonight? You can see I'm in no shape for driving.
We are back in the Element Well studio. Are you thinking about or planning on retirement? Do you have a plan? Go to myelementwealth.com or call 601-957-6006 to let Element Wealth help you find your balance between income growth and guarantees. As always, the C Spire text line is wide open at 601-879-4395. And today, Sports Talk Mississippi is in Oxford to kick off the 27th Double-Decker Arts Festival. It's a 2-day celebration of music, food, and art on the historic Oxford Square. The music lineup begins today with several acts, including Shane Smith and the Saints. Tomorrow, it's a full day of music, food, and fun with Wilco taking the stage Saturday night. Don't miss out on the fun. It's the Double-Decker Arts Festival. For more information and to see the music lineup, go to visitoxfordms.net. So the market's still feeling a little bit better about maybe some breakthrough there in Iran. That's kind of what they're all waiting on edge. In the meantime, because I think largely due to the price of gas, for the first time since 2010, I believe, Democrats have a more favorable poll than Republicans on economic issues. That's a Fox News poll, by the way. Democrats have the edge over Republicans on these issues, and I think that's largely due to this whole affordability situation. The president, however, said that as recent as Wednesday that this is necessary, that Iran can never have a nuclear weapon, and that this job's got to be finished, and that better days are ahead for the economy and affordability. But that's kind of secondary to the threat that Iran poses this country and the rest of the world. They've killed a lot of Americans. They seek to kill even more. They seek to use what military assets they have to wreak havoc and impose harm to virtually every other country. I don't know that they have any friends or allies. They don't appear to have any regard for human life. But this survey just out yesterday found that 52% of respondents think Democrats would do a better job on the economy. Boy, they got some short memories, don't they? While 48% back Republicans. So it's pretty close. But again, do they not realize, Rhino, this is a rhetorical question. No, they don't. That had they had their way, we would have returned to the tax environment pre-Trump first term, the Obama tax environment. And they don't want to acknowledge it because they're not very good at math. Every one of them would be paying more taxes. The very people they claim to be the champions for, the middle class and the lower class, their taxes would have gone up. They don't get that, do they? Despite their attempt for years now to sell this idea, well, all the tax breaks, they all went to the billionaires and Trump's friends. That's just horse hockey. That's been proven. That's been proven in official IRS data. Simply not true. Just look at the standard deduction, the child tax credit, the child care credit, the lowering of the rates and the brackets themselves. All of those work together, combine together to lower your income tax bite. In fact, one of the things I kind of am 50-50 about. I want people to have more money in their pocket and the government to have less, but it actually shifted more of the burden to the higher incomes. It took more people off the tax rolls. Did the Trump tax cuts from 2017 and then extended and enhanced somewhat. So who are they fooling? Obviously nobody. But this poll, because people have short memories, you know that, and it's always, what have you done for me lately sort of deal. And it's a shame because I I agree there are political ramifications of what's going on. There's no doubt about that. Absolutely is. But you got to give this president the kudos. He knew that going into it. And you know his inner circle advised him. They talk about this stuff, of course.
He literally responded to a question about it on like day 2 or 3 of the action, saying you can't allow the politics of it to taint your decision making.
He sure did. Exactly right. He just said it's the right thing to do, and we have to rid the world of this threat. I don't like it either, and I've acknowledged that this probably will be a huge factor and will play out in the midterms. And I hate that because if we turn control of the Congress over, both House and Senate, and that looks, certainly the House, fairly likely, the Senate, put me down for 50-50 at this point. Just looking at the races where the control will be won or lost. But let's hope that this thing gets resolved in short order. And that's apparently what the markets are thinking right now. I think the update, by the way, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth gave a short update this morning, and that was broadcast by all the news networks. That was fairly early. And what I got out of that is that we're still in firm control militarily, but I guess not to the point where we're convinced that they don't have nuclear capability, and not to the point where we're comfortable completely reopening the strait. I would say those are probably the high ground objectives that must be achieved for us to stand down. And that's kind of where we are right now. And he gave that report. He was quite honest about it. And very direct, I thought. Wasn't trying to conceal anything. And, of course, there's a limit to what he can say. We don't want the Secretary of War disclosing strategic information that would go to the world and fall in enemy hands that they would use against us. But I was certainly pleased with the report that he provided this morning. So a majority of Americans also apparently feel that the president is to blame for the surge in gas prices. I mean, I don't think there's any revelation there. He's the one that made the executive decision to launch attacks on Iran, and clearly that is constraining the supply of oil, and that is causing a rise in the price of gas, and that's likely to infiltrate other products and services we consume as well. Now, one thing that really does bother me is more and more reports coming out from our agricultural community where they're really struggling. They were already struggling, including here in the state of Mississippi. And the price of diesel and fertilizer are taking their toll on our agricultural industry in the nation. So hopefully there's something in the works for that. And see, this in my case, to me, in this case, it would be appropriate because government caused this. So if the government steps in with assistance, I'm okay with that. And speaking of government assistance, we were talking about Intel earlier. I honestly wasn't a big fan. You remember the president made an investment on behalf of the American people, an equity investment in Intel. I'm not a big fan of that. But in this case, it turns out, given the sharp rise in the stock today because of their report, it's a pretty good investment for the taxpayers. Not a fan, don't get me wrong. But, Rhino, the Infrastructure Act, remember that one? And you and I were fairly critical of the 17, 18 Republicans that joined with Democrats to pass that through. Actually, the CHIPS Act was the one I was talking about, the CHIPS Act. There was an Infrastructure Act, the CHIPS Act. And that was just a bunch of grants to these big companies that manufacture various semiconductor products. And remember, our own Roger Wicker joined with Democrats in supporting that. He wanted the handful of Republicans that I think was being influenced by Senator Mitch McConnell at the time, the minority leader in the U.S. Senate for the Republicans. But those were just a bunch of grants to companies that you remember came with a crazy bunch of woke strings, and a lot of those companies said, wait a second, we can't run our company effectively with all these requirements you're putting on us, all this social justice nonsense. But those were just straight up grants that the taxpayers don't benefit from. At least in this case, when you're making an equity investment, you own stock, you own the asset, and so if it increases in value, that's producing a return for the taxpayers. It looks like the government is poised to do the same thing with Spirit Airlines. And we talked about that yesterday. Representative Anna Paulina, she had something to say about the Special Forces soldier we were talking about earlier that made $400,000. More on that on the other side of the break.
Poly up of Mississippi.
Are we going to do this? Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Keep rolling. 3, 2, 1.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
All right.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. So, Representative Anna Paulina Paulina Luna from Florida, she's calling for the pardon of the Special Forces soldier who made $400,000 betting on the capture of Maduro. She says, quote, unless the DOJ plans on going after all the crooks in Congress currently insider trading, this is simply skewed justice. There is no justice when guys like this get the book thrown at them, yet members are illegally profiting every day. I'd say that's pretty spot on. And she says, I don't agree with what he did, and he should be required to disgorge all the profits. However, unless they plan on applying the same laws to Congress, I say let him go. That's what Representative Anna Paulina Luna says. Now, I've said before that I don't believe that so-called insider trading is as prolific as it once was, because you got to look at what defines insider trading. And that means you've got access to information the rest of the world don't. Now, that's changed somewhat here recently because there have been significant world-changing events like the war. That's a great example where, yeah, there's some people on the inside, including even the president called them out, Rhino, people in the administration. Not just necessarily members of Congress, but people that work there in the White House or in the agency complement that made investments. You were talking about earlier, selling oil short and doing some of those crazy kinds of trades, knowing that this was coming. Yeah, that's a problem. That's insider trading. It doesn't have to be stock. It could be any asset. In this case, it was oil, because that is a globally traded commodity, as we've explained so many times. No different than equity in a public company is. Yeah, that's not right. I absolutely agree with Representative Anna Paulina Luna here that these rules, these policies should be applied consistently and equally and fairly. At a minimum, it's just the optics of it, isn't it? I mean, even if you're in Congress and maybe you didn't commit, technically speaking, in accordance with the standard insider trading, but you're trading, and it looks fishy at a minimum. So I've said before, it's either an all or none. Maybe we do need laws that say you can't do individual trades. You got to place your assets in a trust while you're serving. I could be down with it. Just eliminate the question. It's kind of like the supplemental legislative retirement plan in Mississippi. A lot of people look at it and say, well, they have all that, and it's really not affecting the public employees' retirement system. It's a teeny tiny fraction of it. But the fact that they have this supplemental additional benefit, it's the optics of it. And so it is true that our legislature, our governor signed into law. Remember this legislation? Was it last year? Folks that are elected from March 1, this past March 1, 2025, going forward, the program's no longer available to them. what I suggested is, well, let's just shut the thing down. If you're in it and you're vested, or you're currently receiving benefits, let's make sure there's sufficient assets to take care of those people. Everybody else, you're in the legislature, you haven't vested yet, we're giving you your money back, but you're out. You don't participate. That would end it right there. It's just, this wouldn't be necessary if there weren't so much corruption. But because we've had so much corruption through the years, through the decades, everything's called into question. Naturally. Everything.
It also doesn't help that you have half the population represented by a party that is unwilling to do anything in good faith. So
Yes.
if we did go through with that, and if you did wipe out the slurp for the legislature, you'd have people in the Democrat Party saying, look, they're just cutting checks to their buddies in the legislature.
You're right about that. You're absolutely right about that. Even though all they're doing is paying them back what they paid in. Right? But it would end it. Take that off the table. Now let's go fix PERS. Quit saying let's get rid of the slurp to fix PERS, because it won't. I agree. It's a supplemental benefit that they dreamed up a long time ago that probably should have never been dreamed up. It's what aggravates people about politics, doesn't it? It's like, well, they have access to this. That's a really small group of people that the whole rest of the state does not. And so let's just put it to bed. We are at the top of the hour. That means Fox News SuperTalk News is coming your way. And on the other side, we've got Representative Jansen Owen. So on the way out, I came across a social media post, and it has to do, it's kind of crazy. Has to do with the data center stuff. But I'm getting the feeling that there's some people in this country, including in the state, based on reading what they say about this, we should just discontinue all business development. Don't construct anything. Don't use any land for anything. No roads, no bridges, no houses, no schools, no stadiums, no businesses. It's crazy.
It's the hippies of your generation.
I think you're right. Coming right back with Jansen Owen.
You're welcome to the show that challenges you to think deeply, and look beyond political posturing. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. Hour 3 of the program is live on this
Friday, y'all.
It's our pleasure to welcome now Representative Jansen Owen. He serves in the Mississippi House of Representatives, represents Lamar and Pearl River counties. What's going on there, Representative Owen?
What's up? I guess I can say good afternoon now since it's 12:07.
That's right. Exactly right. Appreciate you coming on. All right, so you guys finally skedaddled out of town there a couple of weeks ago, and it was sort of a topsy-turvy session. Of course, something that you were heavily involved in, HB2, the rather sweeping education freedom legislation championed by the Speaker of the House, Jason White. It was disposed of quite rapidly down there across the hall in the Senate. What do you think is going to happen in the coming year?
Look, I mean, yeah, HB2, we might as well stop calling it that. But yeah, 84 seconds of death, that's what I call it. No, education freedom, the idea of school choice, I think that's going to be something that'll be around for a long time. It'll be a discussion that'll be happening in the coming years. Not so much next year, I would assume, but, we have a new candidate for lieutenant governor who I think is likely the front runner, who I've endorsed, Michael Watson. He's friendly to the issue. So it's him, and every major candidate for governor also supports it,
yeah.
Together with the speaker. So it may not happen now, it may not happen next year, but education freedom is coming to Mississippi. So when it happens, though, that's the question.
Well, it's one of those things that you're seeing gain a lot of traction across the country, and we are now, of course, surrounded by states, all of whom have implemented robust education freedom programs. Some very recently, Alabama, Tennessee, for example. In Arkansas, Governor Sanders, it was a top priority when she took office a few years ago, and she got that across the finish line in short order. And from all accounts, it's going pretty well. It's seen very favorably. And then our neighbor to the west in Texas, Governor Greg Abbott, he prioritized the policy and finally got it across the finish line in the great state of Texas. Florida, as you know, had it for a long time. So seems like we're kind of lagging.
Well, you know, Tennessee is a good example, too. They passed it with limits. I think it may have been maybe a 30,000 cap. They did a huge expansion just last week, passed out of both chambers. So even in states where they passed limited choice, there's been such a cry for expansion that, you know, politically these representatives have come in and have expanded it to to include more people than what was originally proposed in their plans. And you know what's funny to me, Gerard, though, is like in all of these states, Alabama, Tennessee, Arkansas, Louisiana, you know, the most shocking thing to me is I'm not seeing public schools failing, shutting down. I'm not seeing teachers unemployed. You know, it's crazy how, you know, that's actually not happening over there, despite what some people want to say here.
So, and there are no foreclosures on houses because property values are declining?
Property values are not going down, in fact.
Oh, my God. Quite
Shocking.
the opposite, I think. So, yeah, what do we do, though, Representative Owen? You and I have talked about this privately as well, but the fear-mongering has gone viral, and those talking points just get repeated over and over and over again, but most of them are not rooted in reality.
They're not. I mean, at the end of the day, you got to decide, okay, are you here for a system or are you here for kids?
Right.
And every day of the week, I'm here for the kids, and I'm here for parents, and I'm here for their choices and their freedom. I don't believe that educating our children rides and dials on a government system.
Yeah, amen. Agree. One of the things that I hear a lot, which is kind of I guess a new talking point from the opponents is, well, this whole thing's a ruse. You really won't have any choice. Well, wait, which is it? On the one hand, you tell us that this would just blow up the whole public school system. On the other hand, you say you wouldn't really be able to leverage it. So if you can't leverage it, how does it blow the system up?
Yeah, and if there's really no choice, why do you care? Just let us do it.
Exactly. Oh, man. Well, certainly your efforts are appreciated. I just don't know how to change attitudes down the hall from you. But as you said, we will have a new lieutenant governor. And lieutenant governor, as you know, is very powerful as the presiding member, if you will, of the state Senate. And they have a lot of stroke, a lot of influence. And, of course, you got a lot fewer people over there, 52 versus the 122 you have in the House. So every vote's a little bit more critical. But I do think that if nothing happens next year, I do feel more optimistic about it come 2028 when everybody is seated and the deck's been shuffled a bit. So
I'm really excited to have somebody down there who doesn't take their marching orders from Nancy Loom and the SPLC.
Hey, touche. Oh, man. It's just amazing what kind of influence that they have in this state, a state that I thought was more consistently conservative and adherent to Republican principles. And we should point out, is not education freedom a key plank in the Republican platform?
Yeah, that's true. But you know what? You can do a lot of fooling when you sit next to an old lady on a bench.
That is true. That was a very effective campaign. There's no denying that. But with respect to the lieutenant governor, those who knew him, I certainly have for a long time, I wasn't confused about where he stood on that. And I think a lot of people were, taken back a bit once he was seated in office. That some of his policy views and positions were not exactly what they voted for, not exactly what they expected.
No, I don't think so. But I do got to say, to his credit, he's never really been. He's always been upfront about where he stands on it.
That's true. You're right about that. I agree. He doesn't try to hide it, doesn't try to conceal it. Totally true. So, all right, so what else you got going on in your legislative world that you're thinking about for 2027? That's an election year, and that's usually a little different scenario.
Gosh, I don't know, man. We're just, at this point, we just got out of session, I feel like, last week, right?
That's exactly right. Well, then give us a recap of the session from your perspective. Let's talk about maybe some things that got across the finish line that you were pleased with.
No, I was shifting from education, sticking to education. I was happy to see us get the math and literacy initiatives across the finish line. At the end of the day, the Mississippi Miracle, like we hear all the time, I'm excited to see us expand on those. I think Mississippi is going to continue to lead in education when it comes to those types of reforms. We did get the $2,000 teacher pay raise across the finish line. Of course, many people wanted more than that,
yep.
And I can understand why they would want more. But I'm glad to see that we at least got some sort of an increase to continue being competitive with our regional neighbors who are continuously increasing their teacher pay.
Yeah.
On the judiciary side of things, one thing that was important to me that I worked with Senator England on his bill, which brought the death penalty back for child sexual predators.
Yeah.
And, Louisiana v. Kennedy, in 2008, the United States Supreme Court determined that the death penalty for child sexual crimes was unconstitutional. That is a decision I disagreed with. It's a decision that many conservatives disagree with, including the Trump administration. And hopefully with this new statute, we're going to enable our prosecutors to seek the ultimate penalty in situations where children have been abused by adults to the extent that it warrants the death penalty, and bring that back before the United States Supreme Court for reconsideration. So there's just a few things moving forward. Now, the one thing I really want the state to focus on, which I think is, I don't know how big of a priority it is with some people, but I would like to get Buffalo Trace. I think our liquor situation is a problem, and I hope that we are working to reel that in, whether it be sending it to a full free market system or reining in the contract that we have that's messing up the
I got you.
right now.
Yep. So. Well, there's some reports on that. Can you hang around? We can keep talking if you can do another segment.
Absolutely.
All right. We got Representative Jansen Owen on the line with us. Stay with us. We're coming right back.
Russell Williamson here.
Attention, adoring fans!
It's time for
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Little Tom Petty bumping us in here. We've got Representative Jansen Owen from Lamar and Pearl River counties on the line with us. So there are some victories for sure I think you could point to. You talked about those before we went to break. This teacher pay raise thing, Representative Owen, I got to tell you, and I'm not trying to lay this at your feet, but when both houses initially proposed increases that were higher than what ultimately got passed, man, that's just a problem. That's just with respect to human nature. It's not a good thing when you come out and say, yeah, we're going to do this, and then the other says, yeah, well, we'll see you and we'll raise it, right? And then settled at a figure much lower than that, largely driven by what I think shouldn't have been, but was a bit of a surprise from the Medicaid folks that said, we got to have a bunch more money, and that got in the way of more robust increases for teachers. What do you think?
I agree. It really did. And, when the House passed 1126 with the $5,000 pay raise, that had the superintendent salary cap in it. That same week, we also passed our budget, our education budget, with no reverse repealer that included the $5,000 pay raise. Had the Senate acted on that then, it would be the law now. But, stuff happens for a reason. Obviously, we had some needs at Medicaid that needed to be taken care of that ultimately ended up taking precedent over a higher raise for the teachers. But, that's how the process goes. If you don't move and you act when it's available or when you think you've got it, you might end up losing it. And that's ultimately what happened as the process moved along.
Yeah, you're right. And maybe it's just a function of timing, right? You want to try to get something out there because there's no secret that the teachers have been clamoring for increases, and the market realities are, as you pointed out in the last segment, our neighboring states. They don't sit idle. There's a competition for teacher talent, and money is a big factor in that. So they don't sit idle, and they, even though we just did this a couple of years ago, they respond with more increases, and then that forces us to respond. That's just the competitive nature of the market, especially in a situation where there's more demand than there is supply. We still have a shortage, right? We got several openings.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a teacher shortage. But when it comes to public sector jobs, we have a shortage. We have a shortage in a lot of areas. MBOC, CPS.
Yep.
It's just the fact of the public sector being competitive with the private sector, which has seen increased wages over the last few years. That's just a natural product of that.
Yeah.
But then you got to think to yourself: do we want government to continue growing these government salaries to the extent that it is competitive in the private sector?
Right.
But again, at the end of the day, sometimes there is being a public servant, you make sacrifices in the name of public service.
Well,
it's just like joining the military in a lot of areas. So.
Yeah, those who make the decision to work in the public sector that are a lot of times the attraction is in fact the retirement system. It's the pension system. Because it's unique. You don't have a lot of private companies that offer these defined benefit programs, certainly not as generous as this. There's a handful of large companies that offer that, but for the most part, small and mid-sized businesses, which comprise most of the private sector employment in our state, it's the traditional 401k defined contribution plans that are made available. Those aren't, generally speaking, aren't quite as lucrative and a little bit scarier to some folks, and they like the idea of knowing I'm going to have this amount of money coming in for as long as I live in a defined benefit program. And so,
that's right.
Yeah, that's kind of what's going on there. But the Medicaid thing, just back to that, I got to tell you, I'm concerned about that because they came at you wanting more money. Couldn't really swing that and settled it at a figure below that. Might have another situation next year you guys gavel in and you got a deficit to deal with, just like you did this year in that program. And on top of that, they ask for more money. It just seems like this thing is taking a life of its own.
Well, that is Medicaid, and like any welfare program, it continues to take a life of its own.
Yeah.
I would really like us to look into in more detail as to the cause of these requests for the increases. I know there have been some changes on the federal level since President Trump took over. I understand that. But I do sometimes wonder whether or not these proposed shortages are targeted shortages.
Yeah.
To the extent that we're being told that we're short here because the areas where we are allegedly short are the areas where we may get some political pressure to increase funding, whether it be nursing home beds or whatnot. So I would really like us to take a good deep dive into where these alleged shortages are and see what we're doing and what we can do to make up for it.
Well, the federal government's certainly acting. You've probably seen this. A CMS administrator, Dr. Mehmet Oz, he's putting state governors on notice. You better clean the fraud up. In fact, I'm looking at a letter that he drafted and sent directly to Alabama Governor Kay Ivey. He says you got to do some swift action to revalidate your Medicaid providers. So the fraud's being committed. I've said this on the show countless times. It's the providers that are engaged in the fraud. It's not the enrollees, because it's not something you can spend. You're not getting money for that. For the most part, it's not a big target of fraud by the participants. It's the providers who get paid by the government for the services.
That's right, who have the full control to make those claims and to file for the payment. So, yeah, I'm with you on that. There needs to be a top-down look at how we're working the system and where we're losing this money in Mississippi.
Yeah. Well, he sent a letter to every state Medicaid director in the country calling for a, quote, revalidation strategy that is unique to each state to really do a hard look at these providers and make sure that this fraud is being mitigated and prevented more than anything else. And as you know, we pay a third party to administer our program, like virtually all the other states do as well. So that convolutes it even further.
That's right.
Man. Well, that could be an issue as we move forward, as you very well know. Anything else about the prior session? There were some bills with respect to that I call kind of social-oriented bills that came out of both Senate and House. Your gender on your driver's license, I think, is one thing that came about as well, and holding big tech companies accountable for luring young folks to their platforms for exploitation. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I got to say, my colleague from Pearl River County, Senator Hill, she led on several issues. I think she got 5 of her bills passed the governor's desk, including the driver's license bills, the illegal immigrant enforcement mechanisms, one, criminalizing illegal entry into Mississippi. We also did the Child Safety Online Act, which I think that's going to end up in court. But at some point, these states, I think these states have finally decided that these social media conglomerates that are putting stuff in front of our children, at some point, they need to have some sort of accountability if we let them into our lives like we do right now. So that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And then Representative Hurst, she led the effort this session to criminalize the distribution of illicit abortion-inducing drugs.
Yep.
She took our drug trafficking bill we had to amend the drug trafficking statute, and she added a very well-crafted amendment to it that ultimately criminalized the distribution of abortion-inducing drugs for the purposes of inducing abortion. Of course, she did include exceptions for those medical conditions in which, those drugs can be used that are not to induce an abortion.
Right.
But, there was a black market for those, particularly in light of the Dobbs decision.
Yep.
Even to the extent where I was hearing stories of dudes ordering abortion pills and putting them in their pregnant girlfriend's drinks because they didn't want a baby without them every day.
Oh, my gosh.
And I'm like, what the heck, man? So,
well, those pills have changed the whole game in the issue of abortion. Completely changed it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was glad to see that pass, and I'm proud of Representative Hurst for moving that forward.
Yep. Representative Jansen Owen has been our guest here on Middays. Always good to talk to you there, Representative. I'm sure I'll see you, talk to you soon. Thanks for coming on, as always.
See you soon, man. Have a good day.
You too. Coming right back in the Element Well studio.
From the Seabrook.com.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
Now, on to the real part.
Dynamite! On Super Talk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. A little sticks bumping us into this segment. Thank you for that, Rhino. On the C Spire text line, since the Medicaid fraud is being committed by the providers, we should be able to get that back. The challenge is identifying it. And it's so the estimates that you see, as much as $80 billion in the program, we're talking about the federal level, and by the way, it's a $620 billion federal program. Those estimates are statistically calculated based on scenarios where fraud is identified and pursued. And so that's just looking at that from a statistical perspective is how the number 80 to 100 billion is arrived at. So, and this has been going on for a while. This is nothing new. One of the huge problems that is not fraud necessarily per se, but certainly costs the taxpayers, and that's this dual or multiple enrollment that we've talked about before. So the way the Medicaid program works, in general, third-party managed care organizations is what they're called, MCOs. They're paid by the states to manage the Medicaid programs from an insurance perspective. So the states are generally responsible for eligibility and applications and approval into the program, but then it's the MCOs that essentially serve as the insurance clearinghouse for the program. State pays the MCO a certain amount per person enrolled, and then they deal with the doctors and file the claims, or process the claims, it should be, and reimburse the providers. Is how that works. So, but when you have people that are enrolled in multiple states, not nefariously because they don't get any money for it, there's no motivation financially to do so, but because they move around. People are mobile, and they don't check in with the Medicaid people to say, hey, guess what? I'm not here anymore. And so we end up with people that are enrolled. Same is true in the SNAP program. So the fundamental problem here is the lack of integration among the states. We don't. It's the same thing with voter rolls. There's a whole litany of similar situations where states kind of operate on an isolated basis in their little bubble, and we don't have robust electronic integration among their systems. They all have their own independent systems they operate, and they don't talk to each other. It's the bottom line. And that's how you end up with people registered in these programs, or even to vote in multiple locations. That's an easy fix, relatively speaking, just by investing some cycles in creating and establishing this integration so that we don't have this duplication. Sometimes it's more than just duplication, it's replicated multiple times. And so the bottom line is that if you're registered in Alabama and you move to Mississippi and you don't tell Alabama still going to pay their Medicaid managed care organization. You move to Mississippi, You register, you get in the Medicaid program, you pass the eligibility. We're going to pay you for that one too. So you're getting paid by both states, and they don't even know it. Two different companies could be getting paid by both states and don't know it. It's incredible to think, Rhino, that our government is that far behind. You never do that in the private sector. You go bankrupt. That's part of the problem, is there's no motivation. There's no financial penalty. Oh, just go borrow more money, print more money, right? We don't restrict it in that respect. Private company can't do that, which is why I believe it's so critical to operate government as a private company. So there are no consequences for stupidity like that. But, yeah, it'd be good to claw that back. And, by the way, when they catch them, they do, just so you'll know. And there are reports, you've seen them, that are just astonishing, the number of providers that have been caught. Falsifying claims is a common one. Overbilling is another common one. I'm not sure what else they do, but they figured out how to game the system as a bottom line.
Well, it's because there's so much wiggle room in billing.
That's absolutely true.
I mean, there's not a clear-cut, here's what we're willing to pay for that service or that prescription. It's a range.
Yeah.
So as long as you fall within that range, even if you are technically overbilling, it's not going to flag it.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. So there are approaches to addressing this problem and cleaning this problem up, and that certainly needs to occur. You could do some statistical sampling, and I suspect that's what happens when they start investigating these situations. It just takes some gumption, some initiative to go after it. It's fairly easy to identify, but you got to start the process and be committed to identifying and rooting out the problem, and that's what we lack, in my view, certainly. So it's just a day for crazy stuff. And once again, another example, Rhino, where are we so tied up in knots on this gender stuff? Salt Lake City Councilwoman Eva Lopez Chavez, she's running for Congress in Utah. Once described herself as a Mexican lesbian shaping downtown. I have no dang clue what that means. So she's facing allegations from 4 women alleging sexual abuse.
Unwanted sexual advances.
Right. Even restraining them, right? To achieve whatever she's trying to achieve there. The wrongdoing, says Chavez, never occurred. But 4 have come forward. Wait, I thought in the Democrat world we were to take all women at their word for it, right?
Believe all women.
Yeah. So, God, dog, man, can't we just get normal people? Especially on the Democrat side. Why they all got to be wackos and weirdos like this?
Politics in general is a giant magnet for the craziest people on the planet.
It seems like it. That's for sure. Hines County still would be a DOS system. Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know what kind of systems Hines County has. I was talking earlier about them getting hacked with ransomware a couple of years ago that rendered the county incapable of conducting operations, and I still maintain that's the biggest risk to elections in this country is a complete takedown of the county election systems used to conduct said elections that are very poorly protected from a cyber perspective. And as AI continues to advance, it's going to be fairly easy for the bad guys to penetrate those systems and totally shut them down so that we could not conduct elections. Forget about hacking the elections and changing votes and so forth or creating fictitious votes. How about not being able to hold an election altogether? What kind of chaos would that create in the country, if not the world? And that's just another reason why it's critical for us to maintain technical superiority over our enemies in the world. Mike in Gulfport says, Gerard, some folks have short memories, and I have heard several Fox polls lately that they're not good for the administration. Fox may want to look at how the questions are asked. also have heard on early morning shows some supposed poll regurgitated saying that 4 of 10 say the economy is bad, and that's a majority. Interesting. Can't remember it exactly, but that was the gist. That's interesting. Appreciate you sending that, Mike. Look, I think we have to admit that people have very short memories. It's true. And when they go to the ballot box in the polls to cast a ballot, they think about their current situation today and what will make it better in the future. They don't really care a whole lot about what happened in the past. They just tend to forget and ignore that. And so if the price of gas is elevated come election day in the fall, it will be a factor. You can't deny that. But so what have you done for me lately, world? That's just the way. And he goes on to say, Mike and Gulfport, too much immediate gratification in this world. Yeah, it's just a reality of human nature, though. The SAVE Act passed and all the investigations actually turn into handcuffs and perp walks. That hasn't happened. Oh, this is from on the C Spire text line. This individual was upset that we gave Republicans. I hear this all the time. We all do that we gave Republicans the House, the Senate, and the White House, and we don't feel like they're getting work done. By the way, I'm just looking on the screen right now. They're replaying that interview with a local liquor store owner, Rhino, in Madison. This guy used to work for me. I didn't even recognize him. I just saw his name come up. I didn't know he was in the liquor store business. This has been 30 years ago. Coming right back with the final segment. Stay with us.
King of the road, King of the road.
For all your glass needs.
You know what that means.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
We'll do it live.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
It's Friday, I'm free again. I got my motor running for a wild weekend. It's Friday, I'm out of control.
Final segment of Middays, wrapping up another great week here. We appreciate, as always, you joining us on the C Spire text line, Derek and Greenwood. I would take some DEI right now for lower gas prices, lower energy prices, and lower grocery prices. Trump touts the markets and record jobs. Create all the jobs you want means nothing when the cost of living is outrageous. I mean, it'll figure in, and we could certainly debate this decision by the president to take on Iran till the cows come home. And it's one of those things where, you know, if we get through it, and in fact, they are completely neutralized of any ability to have a nuclear program, and things normalize and prices get back to normal, and markets return to where they were. And I'm honestly shocked that our economy is thriving as well as it is given the current geopolitical circumstances. But he will look like a genius. And if it doesn't, it'll go down as being one of the worst decisions ever made. I mean, that's the risk he took, but he's a business person that understands how to calculate risk. And so I think we have to get out of the way and defer to that, in my view.
I don't think I've said it on the air. I've said it off the air.
Yeah.
My belief is that he's got until July 4th before this becomes an albatross around his administration's neck. Because if it ends any time before July 4th, then Independence Day becomes a big celebration victory party.
Yeah.
But if it lasts until after that, then it's like, well, hold up. We're now on the backstretch leading towards November.
Yep. I agree. But it's a timing issue as much as anything. So on the C Spire text line, our friend that is frustrated at the lack of progress made with Republicans in control. I pointed out one major thing. Of course, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act would not have happened. We would have reverted to the Obama-era tax environment, lots of other bad economic issues and policies as well. But I just point out, again, as we have so many times, the SAVE Act. I want to see that get passed as well. But you've got to have a way to get through the filibuster. And there's all kinds of ideas, from nuking it totally, which would be a huge risk, to enforcing it in the old days and make them talk forever. I mean, there's just different approaches to that. But and I understand, and I share your frustration as well. I'm just pointing out that what we need to do is pick up 10 more seats, 9 more seats. I guess it's 7 now, right? 53, 47, I think, is the balance of power. Let's go get the other seats, and then we don't have to worry about it. That's how to do it. We got to work harder to get more people in the country and other states to think as we do, to appreciate that these are better policies for you. Therefore, elect people that will support those policies. Speaking of which, this one really, really upset me. I don't know if you've seen this. This is an anti-capitalist New Yorker. Her name, I may mispronounce it, Gia Tolentino, 37 years old. She was on a podcast. Actually, it was a streamer. Hassan Piker, known as a left-wing streamer. I'm not sure who that is.
He's a worthless individual.
Seems like it. And she acknowledges on the podcast or on the stream that she steals from Whole Foods. She steals. She doesn't even try to cover it up. And so I saw a little clip of that this morning when I was scrolling through, and she says, yeah, I've been to Whole Foods and I steal lemons. Just out in the open about it, blatantly. She says, I'd be getting groceries and then I would be like, oh, shoot, I forgot something. And I just go back in and steal them. Steal stuff. This is incredible. It's absolutely incredible. So she, by the way, is a self-avowed communist. She endorsed, quote, full chaos of shoppers, quote, stealing wantonly and wholly bypassing the self-checkout machines. What is it about these people? Do they have no morals whatsoever, no moral compass? Stealing. By the way, you see this. Lives in a $2.2 million house. It's not like the old left argument that they use a lot in excusing this kind of illicit behavior. Well, they had this and that's there. They're hungry and they can't afford it. She lives in a $2.2 million house. She ain't freaking hungry. She just thinks it's appropriate because she's a damn communist. Oh, they can afford it. It's that stupid attitude. Man, how does that exist in this country? It just blows me away. Some sick people. She doesn't deserve to be in this country, in my view.
Because too many weak-willed people and bleeding heart blowhards have allowed it to happen for far too long.
That's absolutely true. We appreciate you joining us today, as always, and throughout this week. We'll be back again with you next week. I hope you have a great weekend. Stay safe, and God bless everyone.
You're listening to a SuperTalk Mississippi media production.